Hi, I'm Sophia. Dad always said I got his stubborn chin and Mom's eyes, the good parts of both of them. What he never said was how quickly everything would change once he married Victoria 3 years ago. Your father and I think it's best if you don't visit so often, Victoria told me just 2 months after they got married. He's been so tired lately, and your visits seem to drain him. That was the first red flag. Dad and I used to have Sunday brunches every weekend, a tradition since I was 8. After Victoria moved in, those brunches became monthly, then disappeared altogether. Sophia, honey, I'm just not feeling up to it, Dad would say over the phone, but I could hear her shuffling papers in the background, probably glaring at him. Our weekly calls dwindled too. Sometimes Dad would call from his office, speaking in hushed tones. I miss you, kiddo. Things are complicated right now. When Dad died last week, it felt like I'd already been grieving him for years. Heart attack, they said. Only 58 years old. I stood in the kitchen of my childhood home, now Victoria's domain. The funeral reception was winding down, and relatives I barely knew were leaving with sympathetic nods. I've been meaning to catch you alone. Victoria cornered me by the refrigerator, her voice honeyed but her eyes cold. I think you should prepare yourself for tomorrow. What's that supposed to mean? The will reading, dear. Your father made changes, significant ones. She adjusted her black designer dress. I didn't want you to be blindsided when you discover you've been cut out. My stomach dropped. That's not possible. Dad wouldn't. Oh, but he did. He was very disappointed in your lack of visits this past year, and those arguments you two had. She shook her head sadly. It's all for the best. The estate will remain intact this way. As she glided away, my brother Marcus appeared, his face grim. What did the vulture want? She says I've been cut from the will. My voice cracked. She says Dad changed it. Marcus put his arm around me. That's bullshit. Dad adored you. I called my best friend Elena the minute I got home. She's lying, Elena said firmly. Your dad wouldn't do that. Remember when he surprised you at graduation when the doctors told him not to travel? He loved you more than anything. The next morning, Marcus picked me up. Ready for this? I feel sick. I showed him my shaking hands. What if she's telling the truth? What if Dad really cut me out? Then we fight it? But let's hear what James has to say first. James, Dad's lawyer of 20 years, greeted us at his office with solemn handshakes. Victoria was already there, sitting primly beside a man I recognized as her son Richard, who I'd met twice at most. Let's begin, James said as we all settled into the leather chairs. He pulled out a thick folder and adjusted his glasses. Victoria shot me a smug smile as James cleared his throat to read. James opened the folder and looked directly at Victoria. Before I begin the formal reading, I need to address something unusual. Victoria shifted in her seat, crossing her legs. Can we please move this along? We're all grieving here. Certainly. James pulled out a sealed envelope. Thomas came to see me 6 months ago with concerns about his estate planning. My heart pounded as James continued. He suspected someone might attempt to influence his final wishes. James glanced at Victoria, whose smile faltered slightly. As a precaution, he recorded a video statement and left additional documentation in my possession. Victoria straightened her back. That's ridiculous. Thomas and I discussed all his affairs openly. Is this normal procedure? Richard asked, looking uncomfortable. No, James replied, setting up a laptop. It's quite extraordinary, actually. The screen flickered to life, and suddenly there was Dad, sitting in James's office, looking thinner than I remembered. If you're watching this, I'm gone. I'm recording this because I fear my written will might be contested or altered. I gasped. Marcus squeezed my hand. Victoria has been isolating me from my children, especially Sophia. She monitors my calls, screens my visitors, and has twice attempted to schedule meetings with James without my knowledge to discuss updates to my will. Victoria's face drained of color. This is absurd. Turn it off. James ignored her. I want to be absolutely clear, Dad continued on screen. Regardless of any documents dated after this video, my true wishes are as follows. My estate is to be divided equally between Marcus and Sophia, with Victoria receiving the beach house and a stipend of $3,000 monthly for 5 years. James has documentation of the manipulation I've experienced, including text messages Victoria sent pretending to be me, canceling Sophia's visits. My throat tightened. All those times I thought Dad was pushing me away. He's confused. Victoria stood up, hands trembling. He had medication that affected his thinking. Sit down, Victoria, James said firmly. There's more. Dad's voice continued. I've included medical evaluations confirming my sound mind. James also has recordings of Victoria pressuring me to change my will during my hospital stay in February. Richard looked at his mother with horror. Mom, what did you do? Nothing! He's lying! Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. James turned off the video and pulled out more documents. The legally binding will, witnessed and notarized, matches exactly what Thomas outlined in the video. Additionally, he left a private letter for Sophia. Victoria lunged for the papers. This is a setup. He changed his mind after that recording. Marcus stood between her and James. Back off, now. The will is ironclad, James continued, handing me a sealed envelope. Thomas also instructed me to give you this, Sophia. Victoria pointed a trembling finger at me. You did this! You poisoned him against me! I barely saw him because of you! I shot back, clutching Dad's letter. Richard tugged at his mother's arm. Mom, please, let's go. This isn't over, Victoria hissed, snatching her purse. I'll contest this! I'll sue all of you! On what grounds? James asked calmly. The evidence is quite comprehensive. You'll see! Victoria stormed toward the door, Richard trailing behind. I know things about Thomas none of you know. I'll ruin his precious legacy. The door slammed behind them. I'm so sorry about that, James sighed. Thomas suspected something like this might happen. I stared at the letter in my hands, tears blurring my vision. He knew all along. I opened Dad's letter with trembling hands while Marcus and James watched. My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, my suspicions were correct. I kept a journal of everything since Victoria entered our lives. It's hidden in my study behind the Great Gatsby on the 3rd shelf. I'm sorry I couldn't break free from her control. All my love, Dad. 3 days later, Victoria's lawyer served us with papers contesting the will. She's got some nerve, I told Elena as we drove to Dad's house. She's claiming exactly what she did to him. Classic projection. Narcissists always accuse others of their own crimes. We found the journal exactly where described. Back at my apartment, we discovered page after page documenting Victoria's manipulation. Controlling medications, screening calls, hiding my birthday cards. Listen to this, I read. Victoria threatened to harm herself if I went to Sophia's art show, said I was choosing my daughter over her. I'm trapped. This is textbook emotional abuse, Elena said. I know a therapist who could testify. We need witnesses, James advised. His housekeeper Maria might help, Marcus suggested. Maria had plenty to share. Miss Sophia, she would throw away your letters. She would tell your father you never wrote. And those Sundays when he said he was too sick, she would drag him to her friend's house right after canceling on you. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. You think you're so clever with your little investigation. Victoria's voice was ice cold. Back off now, or I'll make sure everyone knows what your precious daddy was really like. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I've got photos that would break your heart. After she hung up, I called James. She's threatening me now. If we could get her threats on record. Elena snapped her fingers. Invite her to meet. Say you're willing to settle. Wear a wire. We set the trap at a quiet cafe. I arrived early, the recording device hidden under my jacket. Victoria slid into the seat across from me. I knew you'd come to your senses. I just want this over with. Smart girl. Drop this nonsense about your father's real will, and I'll let you keep some personal items. That's it? After everything you did to him? Her eyes narrowed. Do you know how hard it was playing the doting wife while setting up my future? So you admit you married him for his money? Of course I did. Thomas was a means to an end. A boring, predictable man who was easy to manipulate. All those months keeping you away, getting him to change his will, that was work? And the threats? The isolation? The emotional abuse? Please, she scoffed. He was weak. If he couldn't stand up to me, he deserved what he got. And now you think you deserve his money? I earned every penny, and I'm going to get it, even if I have to drag your family's name through the mud. I smiled. Thank you, Victoria. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I tapped the recording device as Exhibit A was entered into evidence. The courtroom fell silent as Victoria's voice filled the room, confessing everything. The judge's eyebrows shot up. I've heard enough. Victoria's lawyer frantically whispered in her ear while she glared at me from across the courtroom. Your Honor, that recording was obtained without consent. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state, Counselor, James replied smoothly. Miss Wilson had every right to record a conversation she participated in. The judge nodded. Proceed with your next witness. The defense calls Richard Montgomery. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom as Victoria's son approached the stand. She looked like she'd been slapped. Richard, what are you doing? She hissed. Telling the truth, Mom. Finally. After being sworn in, Richard didn't hold back. My mother has always targeted wealthy, vulnerable men. Thomas was her third husband. She has a pattern. You ungrateful little... Silence! The judge banged his gavel. One more outburst, Mrs. Wilson, and you'll be held in contempt. Richard continued. I found documents in her home office showing she'd transferred nearly $200,000 from Thomas's accounts to offshore holdings during their marriage. Victoria's lawyer requested a recess, but the judge denied it. I've seen enough, he declared after the final witness. This court finds the original will valid and legally binding. Furthermore, I'm ordering a financial investigation into Mrs. Montgomery Wilson's activities. 2 weeks later, Victoria was charged with financial elder abuse, harassment, and attempted fraud. James called with updates while I packed up my apartment. She's agreed to a plea deal to avoid trial, probation, restitution, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting you or entering the family home. What about her social circle? All those fancy friends she was always bragging about? Gone. The Westfield Country Club revoked her membership. Her charity board positions? Resigned. Nobody wants to be associated with her now. Moving back into Dad's house felt strange at first. Marcus helped me clear out Victoria's things. Richard called, Marcus said, carrying boxes to the garage. He's moving to Chicago. Said he can't face anyone here knowing what his mom did. Can't blame him. How's he handling it? Better than expected. Said he always suspected she was manipulative, but never had proof until now. 6 months later, we launched the Thomas Wilson Foundation for Elder Justice, using part of the estate to fund education and legal support for victims of elder abuse. At the opening gala, Elena raised her glass. To Thomas, smart enough to document everything. And to us, Marcus added, for finishing what he started. The foundation office displays Dad's journal in a glass case, a reminder of how his foresight brought Victoria's schemes crashing down. Last week, I drove past Victoria's new apartment, a dingy place across town. She was struggling with groceries, looking older, defeated. For a moment, our eyes met. I didn't wave, didn't nod, just drove on. Sometimes justice isn't about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about truth finally coming to light, about schemes unraveling, about someone who thought they were so clever discovering they weren't clever enough. Dad knew that. In his final act of protection, he made sure we knew it too. That concludes Sophia's story of justice against her manipulative stepmother. What would you have done if you were Sophia? Would you have shown Victoria any mercy at the end? Or do you believe some toxic people forfeit their right to forgiveness regardless of how far they've fallen? If this revenge story satisfied your sense of justice, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where the good guys win. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know where you stand on forgiveness versus justice when it comes to those who've deliberately tried to harm you.